New videos every day. Life, wisdom.
Dr. Ross, as we approach the 50th anniversary of the assassination of JFK, is there anything that you would like to share with our viewers about that incident?
Sure. Well, first of all, I remember very clearly when my friend Peter picked me up to go to school, and I opened the door to say hi to him, and he said the president's been shot. So I have one of those flashbulb memories like many people do. And I would say I'm an expert, but I've read quite a bit on the assassination and all the background to it. But what I want to explain to you is the connection between, which you would think is ridiculous, the connection between CIA LSD experiments and the Kennedy assassination.
Okay.
So I'm researching all the background and looking at all the documents and so on. And I find that there's been a whole series of LSD experiments funded through MK Ultra. And we know that one of the MK Ultra contractors was a psychiatrist named Jolly West. And we know that he killed an elephant at Oklahoma City Zoo with a dose of LSD.
Oh, my goodness.
And again, this can be easily researched. There's lots of background on it. So Jolly West co-published with another psychiatrist based in Houston who also had CIA military funding. That psychiatrist in Houston co-published with a psychiatrist in New Orleans that Lee Harvey Oswald lived with for a period of time.
Interesting.
So it's Louis Jolyon West, a doctor in Houston, a doctor in New Orleans who knows Lee Harvey Oswald. That's just a couple of steps. Mm-hmm. Going the opposite direction from Jolly West interviewed Jack Ruby and concluded that he shot Oswald while having a seizure. Mm-hmm. So already we're starting to build up this web of connections. Under the MK Ultra and related programs, the CIA gave LSD to people that prostitutes picked up at bars. So prostitutes would pick up these guys at bars, bring them back to the safe house that was constructed by the CIA, mostly in San Francisco, but some in New York. Mm-hmm. And then the CIA guys would watch the prostitute have sex with a guy through a one-way mirror. Mm. And the prostitute had dosed the guy with LSD without his knowing. This is all described in great detail in the documents.
Right. And you explained this in the video we did, Midnight Climax. Explain this experiment.
So probably working in MK Naomi, if not, certainly a consultant to the CIA, was a guy named Frank Olson. Frank Olson worked at Fort Detrick at Edgewood Arsenal, which was the Army Chemical Corps Chemical Weapons Development Center. Mm-hmm. And it looks like he was just about to become a whistleblower. This is all based on a whole bunch of documents plus a book called A Terrible Mistake, because Frank Olson told his wife, I've made a terrible mistake. Mm-hmm. And he was going to become a whistleblower on CIA LSD experiments, including dosing some people in a village in France with a aerosol LSD.
Oh, my gosh.
And this is all documented now, the next couple of steps. So in the 50s, the director of MK Ultra, Sidney Gottlieb, and a bunch of other CIA personnel went to a retreat with Frank Olson. While he was there, they dosed him with LSD hidden in a Cointreau liqueur without Frank Olson's knowledge. He had a bad reaction, went on a bad trip, so to speak, became distraught, comes back, he's unstable. So Gottlieb arranges for him to be seen by a doctor, which you would think would be a psychiatrist. It's actually an allergist immunologist named Dr. Lashbrook, who's an MK Ultra CIA consultant.
Oh, great.
And so they talked to him a couple times, and then a few more nights go by, and lo and behold, Frank Olson jumps out of the 10th floor of a hotel and dies on the street in New York. And his grieving children and wife think it's a suicide. Flash forward 20 years to the Rockefeller Commission report on CIA experiments in the mid-70s. The Olson family is reading this book, which I have, and there's one paragraph describing this incident in the 50s, and they go, that's Dad. And it describes how this guy was dosed with LSD. So they end up pursuing this. They get an apology from the president. They get financial compensation from the president.
Wow.
The whole thing is admitted to. But it's still, it was a suicide. But the Olson family is pursued very aggressively. And Hank Albarelli has now written this book, A Terrible Mistake, which is this thick, very well researched, mounting the argument that it was actually a murder. Mm-hmm. And the LSD was kind of like the cover story. It wasn't really a suicide based on being despondent. And not only that, it wasn't a suicide based on a bad reaction to LSD, which is the backup cover story. It was actually a murder. And the motive for the murder was he was going to become a whistleblower about all these experiments on civilians.
Wow.
And the guy so now everybody's going, okay, that's interesting. But what's that got to do with the Kennedy assassination? And this is where the loop closes. The guy who pushed Frank Olson out of the window is named Pierre Lafitte, who was basically a kind of assassination hitman, drug runner, underground guy, intelligence, asset type guy, who had a whole long list of pseudonyms. One of Pierre Lafitte, who murdered the whistleblower on the CIA LSD experiments, one of Pierre Lafitte's aliases was Louis Heidel. And Pierre Lafitte worked at the Riley Coffee Company in New Orleans in the 1960s prior to the Kennedy assassination. Mm-hmm. Another person who worked at the Riley Coffee Company in New Orleans in the 1960s prior to the Kennedy assassination was a man named Lee Harvey Oswald, who had the alias Alex Heidel. So the guy who killed Frank Olson and the guy who supposedly killed Kennedy both worked at the Riley Coffee Company at the same time, and both had aliases with the last name Heidel.
Wow.
No, there's no way that's just a coincidence. Completely impossible. So therefore, when you walk around this circle, there's some kind of connection between CIA mind control experiments, LSD, the murder of Frank Olson, Lee Harvey Oswald, and the Kennedy assassination.
Very interesting.
And then, obviously, that's just part of this giant, huge network that has all kinds of other things attached to it. Mm-hmm. But that was just some odd, bizarre, interesting information that I kind of stumbled on as my LSD experimentation reading.
Right. So what is your, perhaps your conclusion based on that? I mean, obviously, you mentioned that you don't necessarily consider yourself the utmost expert on this one particular incident, but based on what you've seen, what?
Well, like the majority of people in the United States, according to various polls, I don't think that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. I doubt that he was even the shooter. I would say he's probably a patsy. But just this information about Pierre Lafitte, Louis Heidel, Alex Heidel, Lee Harvey Oswald, that cannot be coincidence. Mm-hmm. So what that tells me is there's some other gigantic backstory. I don't know what it is.
Right.
It wasn't just this guy operating in isolation.
Mm-hmm. Well, and haven't they found that there were actually more bullet shots at the scene than there were bullets in his gun?
That's the RFK assassination.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, where you can see a photograph in one of the books about the RFK assassination, where the county coroner is actually measuring the holes in the door jambs and the surrounding walls, and the number of entry holes in Kennedy, other people, door jambs, surrounding walls is greater than the number of chambers in Sirhan's gun.
Right.
Plus, in addition, when you watch the video, which you can easily Google, it's obvious that Sirhan is shooting him from several feet in front. But the coroner's report is that the fatal bullet was an entry wound in the rear of his head, fired from several inches behind his head. Right. So it's physically impossible that Sirhan fired the fatal shot and was the only shooter.
Right. And are there any links to the CIA that you've discovered, within that story?
Let's see. Well, that takes us to Sirhan, which then takes us to hypnotism, mind control. It's a lot more tenuous and a lot less well proven. Right.
And we have done a couple of videos where we've discussed, the role of not only psychiatric medications in violence, but also the potential possibility that some of these, violent acts, are actually created multiple personalities or this created Manchurian candidate type scenario.
The lead FBI investigator on the Kennedy assassination stated publicly, we're not rejecting the Manchurian Candidate aspect of the case. The lead FBI investigator was considering that as a serious possibility.
Wow.
That Sirhan Sirhan was a programmed assassin. So it's not just some wild conspiracy theory. It's been seriously entertained and considered by the FBI.
Right. And so it's interesting because you think, we kind of think about the CIA and the FBI like, oh, we got these governmental organizations and this, but for a statement like that, it sounds like, well, actually these organizations are very specific, and maybe these behaviors of the CIA, these are even a secret to the FBI.
Exactly. Well, we know they're not a secret to the FBI because George Esterbrooks, who did Manchurian Candidate, super spy creation on contract to the War Department during the Second World War, corresponded back and forth with J. Edgar Hoover over a period of decades. I have all that correspondence. Wow. And did seminars for leading officers of the FBI on military uses of hypnosis, creating artificial multiple personality. That's all known for sure. So the FBI definitely knew about all that.
Very interesting. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This was a very interesting talk. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like this video, leave your comments, your questions, your topic requests down below. I look forward to seeing you again next time. I hope you'll subscribe to the Psychetruth channel so that you never miss a video. I'm Psychetruth Correspondent Corrina Rachel. Thanks so much for watching.